Something that I genuinely enjoy about the Twilight vampires is that each of them have their own backstory, their own beginnings, and only the most special have a supernatural gift, which can be extremely beneficial and incredibly effective. Although many of you have your own personal preference on what vampire is your favourite, I don't think there's much argument when it comes to who has the most powerful, most impactful of gifts, which is of course Jane's gift of inflicting burning pain on basically anyone she wants to with just a mere look, and her brother Alec's ability to numb all 5 of the senses with his black smoke mist-like substance. Together, Jane and Alec are nothing short of a fiercely devastating team that can take down even the oldest, strongest and most agile of vampires. Their story is probably the most interesting origins of all the Twilight vampires, with reason and substance behind the meaning of the gifts and what they experienced as children. In today's video, I am going to take you back to Jane and Alec's beginnings, their early life, their hardships they faced as twins in a time when witch hunts were at an all-time high, and of course, how Arrow discovered them. If you're looking for a good old-fashioned vampire lore video with all the details you're seeking, then this is definitely the one for you, because I'm going to explain it all. Let's take a look at the twins' story. Jane and Alec were born sometime in or around 800 AD in England. Their mother was a Saxon woman and their father was a Frankish soldier, part of one of the Germanic tribes. He was away for months on end, which left the twins' mother to raise them by herself, something not uncommon for the time. As they grew, Jane and Alec had a very close bond and spent most days together. They kept to themselves and didn't enter the village much unless it was necessary. Surprisingly, in their human form and from a young age, the twins displayed strong psychic abilities, something noticed by their mother, which led to her sheltering them more often in case they were noticed by nearby villagers. Still, because of their closeness and not actually living in the village, the twins were bullied by other children and even assaulted during these unwanted confrontations. Arrow, the leader of the Volturi Coven, became aware of the twins through the thoughts of a nomad who lived nearby, and he went to visit the twins in order to properly evaluate the treasure he had just discovered. Both Jane and Alec were quite young, children in fact, and Arrow decided that he would return when they were old enough to turn them into vampires and add them to his coven, eagerly anticipating what supernatural gifts they would have due to their abilities as humans. Not even Arrow would break his own law of creating immortal children, especially if it meant having them on display and contradicting the Volturi's principles. Despite not being able to harness their psychic talents at that point, or even understanding them, bad things tended to happen to those who were unkind to the brother and sister, while good fortune came upon those who treated them well. This was a common occurrence from encounters with the twins, and it didn't go unnoticed. Even though the unfortunate things that happened to those who were unkind were highlighted more so than the good fortune itself was still considered superstitious. It was enough evidence for the village leaders to accuse the twins of witchcraft, and after a quick deliberation, they were both sentenced to be burned at the stake, the common practice to execute witches at the time, despite the twins never actually hurting anyone. Their execution was set, and it was but a day before the twins were tied to the stake and set ablaze. Arrow, who was alerted by the nomad to the situation involving the twins, hurried to the village and interrupted the execution, freeing the twins without much objection as he slaughtered the entire village. Despite them being just 13 years of age, Arrow decided they were old enough to be turned, far past the infantile mindset of an immortal child, and so the twins became vampires. The fire, however, had still done its damage and affected the twins differently, as it greatly impacted the development of their supernatural gifts. Jane felt the unbearable pain from the flames burning her skin, and the memory of such pain stuck within her mind. With a mere thought, she could feel the pain she felt that day at the stake, the flames engulfing her skin, the overwhelming burn, It wasn't long before Jane learned to harness this ability and project it onto others, giving her one of the most powerful offensive gifts ever seen. Alec, as I mentioned, experienced the stake burning quite differently. As the flames reached Jane first, the bellowing smoke from the pyre overwhelmed Alec's senses. He couldn't see, he couldn't breathe, couldn't compose himself in any measure. This caused Alec to lose touch with his senses from the sheer amount of smoke poisoning his body, leaving him in complete darkness. Alec's psychic ability allowed him to harness that experience, to pinpoint it, and he could feel exactly what he felt that day, just like his sister could. And like Jane, Alec learned to direct that experience in the form of a supernatural gift onto any challenger he came across. Together, the brother and sister were unmatched in every way in combat, and I'm going to try to create a very vivid picture for you all to understand just how devastating these two were. Picture this: you're a vampire going up against the twins, and all of a sudden you experience this blinding, burning pain so overwhelming that it literally paralyzes you in that very moment. Every single piece of your skin is on fire, like you're about to explode. Then, within seconds, the pain stops, but you can't see a thing. You can't smell anything, you can't hear anything, you can't feel anything, you can't experience touch, or basically feel the sensation that you're even standing. Then, a member of the Volturi Guard, like Felix, plows through you and you're dead, in pieces, before you've even had a chance to realize what's just happened. That is the deadly combination of Jane and Alec. That is why they're so unbelievably effective and why the Volturi have been unrivaled on the battlefield. Their powers were first put to the test when the Romanian Coven, who were formerly the most dominant vampire coven, sought to take back their throne of governing the vampires and launched an attack with over 100 vampire recruits. Jane and Alec absolutely decimated their numbers with relative ease as word of their power spread across the vampire world. The message: the Volturi now have two of the most offensively powerful vampires in existence. To challenge them is to meet your demise. While using their powers at first to enforce the Volturi's rules, after 1,000 years of existence, both Jane and Alec, Jane especially, began to enjoy inflicting as much pain as possible, and more so, began receiving even more respect for displaying their powers at even the slightest hindrance. In her entire existence, over a millennia, no vampire has ever been able to withstand or resist Jane's supernatural power. That was until Bella's effortless defense against her in Volterra, right before the Volturi Guard, rendered Jane basically powerless for once, something that would infuriate her to the point of holding a vivid hatred against Edward's partner. Jane and Alec are considered invaluable to the Volturi. They are front and center for everything. Although they're important, they make up just part of the Volturi Guard and the actual Volturi as a whole. I think their story is well crafted, but the origin story of the Volturi is just as enticing. The Volturi Coven is over 3,000 years old and have governed the vampire world ever since. Aro, Caius and Marcus are the leaders, or the front three, and oversee all the ongoings. Let's take a look at how the Coven originally began and how it grew so powerful over the millennia. Click the video here and let's continue our discussion on the origins of the Volturi. Let's start it off with their early beginnings.